Spoilers ahead for The Lord of the Rings of Power, Episode 4. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. Today, Brad and I are delving into Episode 4 of The Rings of Power, which is very, very exciting. But before we get into all of that good stuff, please remember to like, share, subscribe if you do enjoy what we do here. You wouldn't believe how much it helps us when people jump on that. It really helps us to find new people and share this nice content with everybody, which, everyone likes, surely. And also, don't forget that you can visit us over at thescriptdepartment.net. We've got loads of interesting stuff going on over there. Some really great stuff coming soon. So if you're a screenwriter, go check that out because there's some exciting things coming your way from that. And also, you can buy us a coffee if you like. We like coffee here at the Script Department. So if you want to help us keep doing what we're doing, then that is a really great way of doing that. Brad, hey
Hi.
man, we're here again for the Lord of the Rings of Power this time around. So we've had some interesting conversations over the last few episodes between yourself, who's kind of a bit more of a newcomer to the world, a visual sort of person, and I know a little bit more about it in terms of the Tolkien's works and things like that. There's some good stuff here, which is from the legendarium, as it were, from the kind of the background of things and this, that, and the other. So I'm intrigued as to what you thought about this episode and how you feel it went. What did you think?
Well, it's weird thinking that we're halfway through already. It seems to have gone quite quickly.
Yeah.
Even though they're like enormous epic episodes, it feels that we're going quite quickly. I think this was a little bit slower. I know they're building to something, evidently. I mean, that's they're even telling you they're building to something.
Sure.
They're still threading mystery into it. We've now got, as far as I'm concerned, we've now got 3 potential Saurons. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a third one in my mind now, and I'm still excited to see where it goes. I had less fun with this one than I did with the first 2, and less so with the third one. But it can't all be super exciting, world building, immense things every episode. So I think this was a stepping stone, which feels weird being in the middle. I would have thought we'd have had a twist or a reveal by now. So I'm sort of banking on that happening. Episode 5, maybe early on, we'll get a big twist, unless they save it for their plethora of cliffhangers that they've been giving us. There's a lot. They're good at the cliffhangers. I quite like
They are
that.
good at that.
But yeah, I think this is probably. I really enjoyed it, but I think it's probably my least favorite episode so far.
Yeah, I similar. I think I mean, I enjoyed a lot of the individual elements of this. I liked the. I like a lot of it. I like a lot of stuff. I do think there is quite a ponderous tone to it. I think it is kind of, it needs a little bit of an injection of energy. I think there are occasions where it does sort of it feels a slog would be too harsh. I'm not going to call it a slog because it's not. It's lovely, it's great, and it's enjoyable. But I think there are I think we need an injection of energy here, which is weird because it does kind of stand opposed to what you're saying, which I agree with, which is, wow, how are we halfway through this already? But I wonder if that's more a case of we saw 2 episodes back to back, and now, so it kind of feels like we're only on episode 3, I suppose, in a sense. I needed more from this. I needed like that midpoint twist. Like you say, I don't know. It didn't entirely do it for me, this one, though I did, like I say, I did enjoy it. So let's get it. We'll get into the kind of individual elements. I enjoyed I enjoyed the Numenor flooding situation. I enjoyed seeing that because that's something that, and I'm going to be really careful here because there are things we know about, those of us that know these things, that there are things we know about there, and we know why what happens and when and how and things like that. So that was cool, and it was very nicely put together. And I like the fact that we are. It's something that's always really great about prequel stuff, whether it's a prequel to something that may or may not happen later in a series, or if it's a prequel to an established property. If you're interested in our conversations on prequels, you can see Star Trek: Strange New Worlds for extensive conversation on prequels and things like that there. but I liked that very much. Did that hit it for you? Because the kind of the way the kind of prophecy element there, did that work for you?
Yes, I did enjoy the idea that they're trying to fulfill something, and and this is something that Tolkien, set in motion, and I like that there's a respect there. One thing that it did make me realize is that we're watching two different shows, you and I. So you're watching it with all of the little winks and Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not. I'm watching it from a sort of a Jackson verse sort of approach to this thing. Of course, I'm aware of Lord of the Rings. My father read me passages from it when I was a kid, but I was a kid. I can't remember these things, and so it has made me, because I've tried to avoid anything just so I can see it fresh, and it doesn't feel that's right in this situation. When TV moved into the format of what it is now, I got burned a few times on a few episodes with either jumping into a graphic novel it was based on, or even like historical dramas, reading up on the history, and then all of a sudden I knew exactly where it was going. I was like, he's going to die in a snake pit. I know that now. In 5 episodes, he'll be dead in a snake pit. Damn. But with this, I felt like I was missing so much. So I've been doing a lot of lengthy, beautifully hand-drawn timelines and things like that. And yeah, it's been great, because then I can go, that was what that look was about in episode 2, and that sword, the axe, yeah, there it is, yeah, and it's all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I kind of felt a bit left out, so I wouldn't even go close to saying I know really anything about where it's going, but there are parts of it where I've gone, okay, the compressed timeline, I probably want to know more about that, because the Tolkien timeline, there's thousands of years between some of these events that are all happening at the same time now. So for me to try and delve into little bits and go, oh no, that can't be right, to understand the timeline of it better, yes, I kind of get what's happening now and where the things have been moved from in the sort of eras and the ages and stuff like that. So it did actually make me go and do a bit of research, which is, I don't know if they're hoping for people to do that, because the law of writing is it should stand alone. You don't need to see or know anything about the other things. But we live in a different world now where it's all there. You can dual screen. You can read while you watch, or pause it, and whatever you want to do. But I don't know if that's how they intended for us to watch it. But I've been doing a lot of googling.
That's really interesting, because I wonder if what that says about this really is, has this been made too much for the I guess the question is, what is the audience of this show? Is the audience of this show people who are familiar already with Tolkien's work, or is the audience of the show people who are not familiar with Tolkien's work? I think there's an argument to be made that you can't have it both ways, because you are going to, and I wonder if that's what this show is trying to do, is trying to have it both ways, but in doing that, maybe it's moving things around for those who know the events and those who know what happens and when it happens, which is quite loudly annoying people on the internet. But it's also then making newcomers to the world actually have to go and do some reading around it. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, and it's a good thing, the Peter Jackson films are how I started reading around it, and so it's good. It's a good thing to do. But should you have to do that in order to understand the thing that's happening right there and then? Should you? I would argue no. You absolutely shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to enjoy it just as a standalone TV series. So that's quite interesting. I wonder how that will play out in time. So you feel as though you kind of get it now. Do you feel as though your enjoyment of it has changed now you've done a bit of reading around it, or are you still
a little bit?
It has
a little bit. Well, it was very targeted reading, because I was like, I think it's from the point of view of being a writer. You know where the beats are, or where they should be, and you know where the little nods towards something might come because of the patter and the sort of almost music in the script. And then there's something happens, you're like, well, that's where something would have happened. What did that mean? But I think watching it without a writer's hat on, it probably doesn't matter. It probably doesn't matter that you don't know about what the axe is. that they're referring to, and you don't know. Well, even if you haven't seen the Jackson trilogy, even if you don't know what Mithril is, and that there's a Balrog hiding somewhere down there, I don't think it matters. Like, they're still building into it in a way that it'll still be a surprise if you didn't know it was coming. Great. Or it'll be a big, exciting thing you knew was coming and you were dying to see it. So I think they've been very careful about that. But from a writer's point of view, I'm like, oh, I kind of need a bit more here because I can see all these little things happening and I don't know what they mean.
Okay, that's really interesting. I wonder. I'll come back to this point actually later on because I want to get into some of the minutiae of the show, and the episode itself, and looking at that. I really enjoyed there's a great bit of subversion that goes on at the beginning of this. You have Galadriel, great and powerful Galadriel, who stands before the Númenórean Queen Regent and gives a great speech about how I am Galadriel and I am this, that, and the other. In jail. I loved it. What a brilliant thing to do. And I think, because you expect it's a well-trodden area of fantasy, isn't it? Somebody gives a speech about how important they are and then they get away with something. Whereas now it's not the case. I liked that. Did you dig that? I really liked that.
I loved it. I chuckled. I mean, it was when the second it happened, you're like, oh yeah, okay, brilliant. And it was, I did like that. And it was Halbrandt's response as well, as if he'd seen the whole thing anyway and he knew what had happened. Yeah. I quite like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a lovely little moment there. One thing I'm not sure of, looking in Numenor in particular, Isildur, I'm not sure about the shortening, and this is just such a silly little thing, but I'm not sure about the shortening of his name to Isil. I feel like it's sort of this great figure that, this great figure of Isildur, it's a mighty name, and you've got people running around going, oh, Isil, oh, Isil. I don't know. Does it undercut some of the characters' importance, do you think? I'm not sure.
Possibly, but you're not born a warrior prince king, are you? You're not born that. You just he becomes that, and it's like I know a fair few Tolkien fans, and they were losing their minds over Galadriel not being this graceful, patient, figure full of wisdom, like that she's angry and bloodthirsty at times, and it's like, but she's got to grow into that, right? Like, that's surely we're seeing characters grow into themselves. So I didn't dislike when, I think it was the his sister says it first, Isil, and I quite liked that. I was like, oh yeah, they'll probably have little nicknames for each other, won't they? And it's I thought it was quite sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not anything that bothers me, and you're quite right, because it's one of the things I really love about this portrayal of Galadriel is that she has to be like schooled by a human. She is infinitely older and wiser and like all this, that, and the other, but then the human has to go, whoa, stop, wait a minute, listen to people. And at the time, I thought to myself, oh, I don't know about that, because she's I don't know if it's in character for her to miss something like that. But then, on reflection and applying your point there, it absolutely is. She is a traumatized individual who is not able to grow beyond her obsession with defeating Sauron and revenge for her brother and things like that. And so, actually, the more I think about it, the more I think, that works. That works so well. And then, I think it's, I love the portrayal of Galadriel. I think Morphy Clark is doing a really, really good job of that. And it's just, she's just great. And I think it's really compelling. And I think that relationship between the two of them will be really interesting to unpack over time. See kind of where that ends up going and whatnot. Because what do you think?
Yeah, so he's Halbrandt's my third Sauron.
Really?
He's my third Sauron. Yeah, and it feels really like, as much as Meteor Man, the Star Man was my Sauron last week. Now I'm totally convinced, because he's the king of the Southlands that she managed to find in the middle of an entire ocean by chance, and it's like. That feels too coincidental, but he's very violent when his mask slips, and he's really manipulative. Like he's talked to 3 or 4 people. He talks to 2 in the Galadriel escape scene, and completely manipulates their actions to
Yeah,
make
that's
them
very true.
sail to Middle Earth. He's got his hand on the steering wheel there, and nobody knows it. I'm like,
Mm.
is that him? Is that this? Because they're putting a load of fakes in there. Like they really want us to think Joseph Maul as Adar is Sauron.
Mm.
No, that can't be. It's too easy. And now the Meteor Man, I think that's gone on for too long. Like maybe it is a Saruman, or something like that. I don't know, but it's like Halbrand's got this thing going on, and there's something really unhinged underneath there somewhere. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but it does feel a bit like
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
See, I think my theory on him is I think he is the king of the mountain. In the Return of the King, Aragorn comes to call the ghosts to defend and hold them to their oaths. I think he's that guy. I think he's the king of that group of people, and he will because he portrays Isildur, right? So they're within that right frame, they're in that right area, that right time. I don't know if they've actually met yet, but I think if they haven't, then they will. That he's in the right place because he could be, he has the right kind of violent streak. He has that kind of. I've just got a feeling. I don't know. I don't know entirely is borne out with. Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it's entirely borne out with the kind of plot threads there, but I think that might be it.
That makes sense.
Or maybe he's the Witch King. That might be a thing because if he is the because again the Southlands. So the Southlands we have learned, I think last episode, is what Mordor will become, or what all Southlands will become Mordor, rather would be a better way of putting that. So if he is the king of that realm, is it that Sauron will give to him one of the Rings of Power when he's reinstated? Is the plot of this, is the arc of this, that they will, this first series, reclaim the Southlands and everyone thinks, oh, that's weird because I'm pretty sure that was going to be Mordor. And then Sauron has to change tact as Celebrimbor is building his tower with his forge and stuff like that. And then he goes, oh, I know, I can forge some pretty great Rings of Power. I'll go do that instead of doing what I was doing over here with that. And eventually he ends up in Mordor by giving the king of the Southlands the ring. I don't know. Maybe that's
possibly. I think the Mountain King is quite interesting. What is it? You'll be able to tell me. What is it Gandalf says to Aragorn when they're in there? It says, is it the last son or the last descendant of Is it Numenor? He says he's still alive. It's the last descendant. I think. When they're in the mountain and he's sort of whispering away to him, and he's sort of, I can't remember what it says.
The mountain with them. Because the last descendant of Numenor would be Aragorn. That's the he's the last descendant of Elendil, who we've met, obviously. And so Gandalf doesn't. I don't think Gandalf goes into the mountain with them.
Or is it before they go in? I can't. This is my layman's following of it. But I remember there was something about what Gandalf says, and I wondered if that. I'm gonna have to go back to Google, aren't I? I feel like such a Philistine.
No.
You're
allowed to be, though. This is the point. You're allowed to be a Philistine. You should be able to. You should be able to watch it without having to know this stuff. Maybe that's a hang up for me. I have to get over, but I don't know. I think it could be. I think it could be quite interesting, and I find it really interesting the idea that the Southlands will become Mordor, because it's an interesting idea. You think of like the visuals in Jackson's trilogy of this kind of the scorched earth, the blackened hillsides and things like that, and then you compare it to what we are seeing in the Southlands today. You know, not exactly lush, but it's green, and it's quite beautiful in places. And you think that contrast is terrifying, that it would become it would go from one to the other in that extreme. It's quite startling, I think, and I couldn't get that out of my head while I was watching this episode. Just the fact that all of these these people are, and this land is doomed. Like it's quite compelling, I think, as an idea. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think there is a tremendous fear building somewhere in there. The idea that the bartender as well is a follower of
Yeah, yeah.
Sauron, and he's been using the hilt, and it's like, okay, so he's been using the hilt. Um, is it? I've seen a lot of discussion whether it's the first blade. Um, what's the name of the Nazgul blades? I can't remember.
The Morgul blades.
Yeah, is it one of the first Morgul blades? And the boy who also cut his hand on the blade, he started to look a bit unwell. I mean, fair enough, they're probably starving. Maybe they've made, but I don't know. There's something going on there. He's gone a bit skittish.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is definitely a building fear. I mean, I think we're definitely getting towards a Helm's Deep assault on the tower, which is going to be thrilling because it's going to be a similar thing where they're putting helmets and armor on children and old men, and there's going to be a real thrill and terror in that, and we're sort of going to get one of our really first big battles. I think that isn't a flashback to the past. So there's something exciting coming. I hope that's not the finale. I hope that is in the next couple of episodes, and we get. I'm starting to think we won't now, but I was hoping we'd get the birth of Mordor at the end of this series, but maybe we won't.
I don't think so. I think that'll be for later. I suspect that it will be the end of the series. We'll see that battle because you think Galadriel is also is rousing the troops in Numenor, or trying to rouse the troops in Numenor, right? To go and although she comes back actually, so it looks as though maybe that's worked out because the white leaves fell. I love that as a lovely image as well. That was really great moment. And then so it seems as though everyone's kind of heading towards the Southlands in terms of that, apart from the Harfords, which of course are still kind of hanging on there. Though maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll end up going there. Maybe that's a plot that will be kept separate until a future series, and then perhaps it's that this bearded fella has to get there at some point and he has to go with the Harfords. Maybe that's kind of where we end up going there. Don't know, but the Doom plot line is always just what a treat. What a lovely place to visit. Isn't it fun? I love it there.
I love it. I mean, I like the elves, and the more we learn about them, and where they bring that little bit of mithril out and they name it for what it is, I'm like, that felt exciting. I'm like, yes, and you can see his lust to get in there and get it, and you're like, oh, this is it.
Yeah,
this is it. This is how it falls. This is how the Balrog gets out, and it's like, great. I'm really that's probably one of my most favorite storylines, and I like the conversations he's having with Durin the the other Durin. It's Daddy Durin.
Yeah,
and I like I like the conversation they're having about the heritage and the knowledge that washes into you when one king dies and passes it on to the next. And it was really touching. He's like, I'll always be with you. He was apologizing to him because he nearly got some miners killed, and he'd done something he was forbidden to do, and he said it's okay. Like, I'm with you. And it was, I felt a little bit choked up in that moment because you can see the animosity over the mithril, but still there's a deep love between them. And for a race of beings that don't always show their feelings or talk about their feelings, it felt really quite a big scene.
I agree. It's a lovely bit of evolution for the way dwarves are kind of shown in media, because it's one of those things where often they can be the comic relief, and they can be, and we've had a little bit of that here, which I don't hate entirely, but they can just be that. We are seeing a very much deeper side to this dwarven race than we've seen before. You think back to The Hobbit. These are the descendants of these people that we're seeing here in roundabout sort of ways. Certainly the inheritors of the culture, and you don't get the feeling. It's not as subtle. It's not as personal. You feel as though it's I'm going to be soft with you, and then I'm going to be gentle with you, and then I'm going to man things, beards, yes,
Yeah.
let's go and drink some ale. It's all kind of undercut with that sort of gross masculinity, whereas this here has that lovely gentility. And I agree with you, it was really really touching. It was a lovely, very touching moment that I really enjoyed that. And the more time we get to spend there, the happy I am, to be honest with you, because it's a lovely place to spend a bit of time. So the going back over to Numenor here a little bit. So the Queen of Numenor seems very, very happy to give up her deep dark secret without much in the way of without too much pressure being applied. And then in Khazad-dûm, Durin also seems quite happy to give up his deep dark secret without too much pressure being applied. And then in the Southlands, you have the bartender who turns out to be a follower of Sauron's, who gives up his deep dark secret without too much pressure being applied. Are these plot contrivances, or does this make sense? Because for me, it jumped out to me a little bit as, okay, we're being a bit frugal with the idea of a secret here. Should we? Yeah. What do you think?
So I think in all three cases, to an extent, it was a secret that they wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So the bartender guy only tells him when he sees that he's been using the hilt.
Sure.
Yeah. So he's like, do you know of Sauron? And it's like he knows that he's been using that hilt. He knows he stole it, and he's been biding his time. And this kid's come back after surviving, a very dangerous environment, and he's like, he must have used it. Then he looks at his wrist and goes, "Yes, you're in my gang." Yeah. With Durin, you're in my gang. You're in the Sauron Club. With Durin, he did sort of hide it. I mean, Elrond did track him down, and he was hiding that from everyone, even the king. And the fact that he walked in that door means, he's gonna have to tell him now. Like he's in the door. It's just around the corner. Like he can't not. And he did try to conceal that, but it was good to see the oath, the way the oath worked, and I thought that was quite interesting. And that if he betrays him and his family will be cursed until Durin is dead. I think I got from that for the rest of Durin's life. And then what was the other secret? Oh yeah, the Numenor. That was that. Yeah, she was waiting for her. I mean, she could have stood in the door. Or down the bottom of the stairs. Like, hang on, you can't come in here. But no, she waited there. She was like, she's not going to stop. She needs to see this, and I need to shut her up. And I'm going to do that by showing her this and telling her why I wanted to be quiet, which kind of worked, but it was a trifecta of secrets revealed, all quite close to one another. So yes, there may be cramming in some expositional truth telling into this episode, but I think we probably need that if we're going to get a move on to get to a giant bloody battle before the end of the series.
It's a good and fair point, that one. One last thing I want to ask you, which is what I mentioned I was going to come back to later on. Is it a problem that we are talking that each time we start these conversations? So this is the fourth episode, third time we've had one of these conversations. Each time we start these conversations, we tend to start with the context of the show. So in comparison to, and in terms of the books, and in blah, 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 are we more excited about what this show represents and what this show means than what is actually happening within the show itself? Do you think? I'm putting you on the spot here. It's an easy question, but
to a point, and I'm trying to see it through that lens. Like we were whisked off to the premiere, so I'm sure we were quite giddy about what we were watching. Sure. And there's a level of excitement in seeing something so epic. This is another great leap forward in TV. Like it's not even, I can't even call it TV anymore. It's just like streaming. This is on lots of other screens. It's not like a broadcast, is it? But there are I don't know. There is a glitziness and I don't know. There's a glamour to what we're watching here that is very exciting, and the fact that they're trying to make another time they're trying to make something that could never be made. So you kind of want to watch them spin all these plates. You want to see where all the storylines go. In your case, and I guess starting to be my case, you want to see how it compares to the Tolkien timeline and the writings of Tolkien. I mean, there's been a few moments in this where I was a bit like, oh, the dialogue doesn't necessarily feel as good as it has done in other movie iterations or TV iterations or animated things or whatever it is. There was a few bits of dialogue in this episode, like the who's the guy who gets his eyes blacked, who gets beaten up by Halbrand. You know, the one who's screaming "elf lovers," or you know, some of. I know it's intended, but some of his dialogue isn't as eloquent I would have expected for, you know, a Númenórean, or you know, it just there were a couple of little weird bits in it where I was a bit like, oh, have they rushed that through? But the spectacle of it is seductive, I think, as a TV show. It is so big and it was so expensive and there's been so much fuss about it. I'm sticking with it to the end, no doubt. Like, nothing will be able to stop me watching this. And it's whether I care or not that I've been seduced by the great eye of Jeff Bezos. Like, is it
great eye of Jeff Bezos?
The great eye, but do I care? Like, it's yes, I know there are some people are worried about that, but I'm going to preserve my judgment until the end of the season, I think.
Yeah. I think that's probably a really wise view of it. I'm also similarly trying to bear in mind kind of our personal context as well as the show itself. I think the question I am going to be asking over the next 4 episodes as we get towards the culmination of the series is because, and there's a big because here, we're not covering the House of Dragon at the moment. We are by episode, but we are going to be looking back as a series retrospective on that, because I think a lot of us are watching it, so we want to talk about it down the line. Now that is a show that has significantly less budget, is not on the same level visually, though it is very nice. And yet there are elements of it that I am perhaps not enjoying more, but I am drawn to. Beyond the Rings of Power. So the question I am asking myself at the moment is the Rings of Power more style and less substance? Is the substance there, or is it not there and it's wrapped up in a very beautiful, very expensive green elven cloak? That's what I'm trying to work out at the moment. I suspect probably somewhere in between. But that's the question I'm going to be asking myself over the next 4 episodes of this that we do. So I'll be looking for your counsel, oh Sir Brad,
yes.
on that one.
Yeah, I think if we see the all these threads connect up, then we'll be happy. And if there isn't, and it was just these beautiful visuals with some ideas of a mystery that they just didn't bother to tie up. I mean, I can't see them doing that. I can't see them going, we'll just chuck loads of money at it and put it into the visuals. They're going to have written this and written it again until it all tied up. That's what I'm hoping. I'm not a big fan of the failure. I don't like to see things fall on their face. So this will be a pretty big fall if it does, but we'll see where it goes.
Brad, thank you very much. We shall see in the fullness of time how it all takes place. So, fingers firmly crossed. Thanks for watching, everybody. You can check out more of these previous episodes. Recently, we got episode 1 and 2, then 3, and then this one's 4. So, join us for next week for number 5. And until next time, have a great time watching The Rings of Power. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.